already. And what's interesting is she said, we surveyed the top 1% real estate agents, and these people all made more than $1 million in gross commission income. Right? That's what that book is. That book's 12 years old. And the interesting thing about it is they're just now discovering what we wrote in that book 12 years ago. So I thought it was kind of interesting because I had a showing assistant 15 years ago, and it was the #1 most successful thing we did to grow and build our business. Do not go cheap. Don't go cheap with a showing assistant. The showing assistant represents you, represents your standards, represents you in the business with your clients while they're having the most fun in this process. They're looking at houses, right? How cool, we're looking at all these houses, and they're not doing it with you. So make sure that they're doing it with somebody that they like and that represents you very well. My average sales price at the time was around 100, maybe 95 to $105,000. My showing assistant made $100,000 that year. And it just expanded our business. So the other thing that I wanted to say about that was, I think it was in 2006, there's a guy named Jeff Colvin, C-O-L-V-I-N, and he is a writer for Forbes magazine, Forbes or Fortune, one of those two. And he wrote a book called What It Takes to Be Great. And he went and he took a look at, how many of you read Good to Great? That's like most people have heard. Really? Okay. So Good to Great is another one of those studies where they said, what's the difference between a company that's really good or a person that's really good and people that are really at the top? Okay, so they found a whole bunch of different things. But I'll give you an example. They found that the Beatles, for example, were so good at music because they had about 10,000 hours of practice in bars and clubs across Europe before they became big. And there's a difference in the amount of practice. So, so for example, somebody that would go to the Juilliard School of Music would have had 10,000 hours of practice before they make it into Juilliard. Somebody who goes to Colorado State University and takes music probably has about 6,000 hours worth of practice. And they saw this across all different areas. And if you read the book Outliers, the other thing they found was that people were born January, February, and March were more likely to be successful in sports and things like that. Anybody know why?
They got started before everybody else.
Yeah, they had like 6 to 9 months worth of extra growth over the people that were born later in the year, and so they're usually bigger, stronger, a little bit more developed, all of that kind of stuff here. But the point that I'm making is this: there are some demonstrate. You can't choose when you were born. Everybody know that, right? Okay, can't choose when you're born. But there are some demonstratable things that somebody can take a look at and say, how did that person get all the way up there? And so one of the issues is deliberate practice. Okay, so anybody here golf? Okay, the rest of you, have you seen a golfer? Okay, so in golf, people go out to the driving range, and some people go out in the driving range and they say, I'm going to hit a bucket of balls. And so they walk out there with this goal and say, I'm going to hit a bucket of balls. But the person that's doing deliberate practice says, you know what, I'm going to hit a bucket of balls, and 80% of them are going to be within 20 yards of the pin. And that's deliberate practice. That's saying I want 80% or more to be within 20 yards of the pin, number what I'm shooting at, rather than, now me, it's like hit a bucket of balls and see which direction they go. So that's one thing. It's #1, deliberate practice. One of the other things was, it's not just deliberate practice, but what are your mental models? What is it that you see here and here? What are you looking at? And what is it that you're practicing in business? And what I want to tell you is the book that you've just been given, the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book, these are the models. And they haven't changed. In fact, what's happening is, because this was unique, and when we had that original mastermind that you were talking about, started out with 12 of us. And we were making lots of money in real estate. And originally it started out as what we called a wealth building mastermind. And Gary Keller got together with us and he said, you guys are making a lot of money. Who taught you what to do with it? How many of you know somebody who was highly successful, made lots of money, and didn't have any left? Anybody give me some names?
Mike Tyson.
Mike Tyson. Huh?
Gary Coleman.
Gary Coleman, Mike Tyson. Yeah.
MC Hammer.
Yeah.
MC Hammer, yeah.
Yeah, MC Hammer. There's another one. There's another one. You know, I sold a house to some people and they'd won the lottery. 3 of them at work went in on the lottery. It was a $3.3 million. They got $1 million apiece. And I wound up selling them a house, and then a few years later, I actually helped them find a rental property after their house got foreclosed on. So they made all this money, but they had no skills in what to do with it. And that's what Gary was saying with us. Well, after about 18 months, he's looking at us, and we're having a conversation like, how much do you know, who do you have on your team, and how much do you pay your transaction coordinator, and how much do you pay a buyer's agent? Do you have a buyer's agent? A showing agent? You have a showing agent? What do you do with a showing agent? That's our conversation around the table. And Gary stood up in front of us, and he said, you guys are just good at what you do in sales. You don't know squat about business. And so he changed the mastermind around, and that's what became the book. He said, what are the best practices? What are the models? So the first part of the book, and I'm not here to advocate the book, I'm just keying off what she said at the very beginning. What's interesting is nothing's changed. The only thing that's changed that's not in the book here is the showing agent model. And because I was the only one using a showing agent out of all of the ones, they weren't paying attention to that part then. And now they've come and said, okay, now don't just get a buyer's agent first, get a showing assistant first for the buyer's agent. So, so you know what? This is like, I think, like a mastermind. And I'm here to talk about or answer questions about what I do and how I do it. And so let me just give you like a 2-minute predicate to this. I moved to Arizona from upstate New York. And when I moved to Arizona, I didn't know anybody at all. But Arizona was just growing like crazy. This is back in the mid-70s. And it was growing like crazy. And so I'm calling my friends back east, including my family, and I said, you can't believe what's going on. You need to buy some investment property out there. And they said, well, we'll do that if you'll go ahead and manage it for us. So I started selling investment properties and managing them because that was my sphere of influence. It was back in New York. So number one lesson out of it, it does not matter where you lead generate from, just lead generate, even if it's back in New York. In fact, I was teaching Bold in Las Vegas, and there was a lady in there who said, you know, I don't have anybody calling, I'm just going to call my mom. And Mom's in Winnipeg, she's in Las Vegas. And she goes, Mom, I'm just making telephone calls, making contact. Who do you know that needs to buy a house, sell a house, or invest in real estate today? And she goes, well, honey, don't you know? And she gave her a referral for Las Vegas from Winnipeg, Canada. One of her friends in Las Vegas. So it doesn't matter where you lead generate from, right? So I'm calling back, and I started this property management business. Got up to about 25 properties, and I started selling. I knocked doors and helped people buy and sell houses. And actually, it was so easy. I thought it was easy. Sold $1 million worth of real estate my first year in the business. It's like, wow, this is awesome. And then Jimmy Carter years hit, and the interest rates went up really high. And so, but continued to grow and build the business. I told you that I was a part of this. I was in Phoenix, Arizona. I was the number 4 agent in Phoenix, Arizona. And our number 1 real estate company there was Realty Executives. And back at the day, RE/MAX, if you don't know, Dave Liniger was a Realty Executives agent in Scottsdale, Arizona, and he copied the model and went and franchised it. Did extremely well with it. And so during there was a whole decade when RE/MAX couldn't even open a franchise in Arizona because we were the original mousetrap. And so reason I'm telling you that story is when I came over to Keller Williams, I was at the top of real estate in Phoenix, Arizona. I was the number 4 agent. Everybody's tapping me on the back. Steve, you're awesome, all that kind of stuff. But what was happening was, I didn't think I was great, and I didn't think I was where I wanted to be. My goals were if this is good, then this is better. Let's go here. Great. If this is good, let's go here. And that's kind of the way I think. And so when I came over to Keller Williams, I had already been 20 years in real estate. And I was already selling between 10 and 15 houses a month and had a really good business going. I was growing and building a team, trying to figure out how to make that happen. And at that time, nobody had teams, so we had to figure out, well, what is an assistant, and what does an assistant do, and how do you pay an assistant, and do they have to be licensed or not? And all of those questions are being asked back in the 1980s for people who were pushing the envelope and saying, you know what, I don't have a job in sales. My thought process is, I'm in the real estate business, and I serve my clients with their real estate needs. And there's a difference between having a job in sales and serving your clients, because what happens is the better you serve your clients, the more your clients refer to you, and the more your clients refer to you, the more people want to do business with you until you don't have any more time to add to the equation. Anybody experienced that? Your business is already 24/7 and you don't have any more time to add to the equation. So what do you have to do? You have to figure out how to run it like a business, not just be great at sales. Came over to Keller Williams within 18 months. After going through the mastermind and going through the book process and stuff, I'd more than doubled my income. I stopped working Sundays. I worked Saturdays only if I felt like it, and I only worked Thursday nights. Changed my whole life. I'm making twice as much money, working less time, and at the same time, I'm helping people grow and build business. So I have a property management company right now, and it's because of the Millionaire Real Estate Agent Mastermind we were in. We talk about going to the 7th level. So I'm not sure if I made this point or not, but I intended to make the point. The mental models are in there. The models that you have to think, the models to follow, the models to say, how do I pattern my business? What is it that I do to go from here to here? What do these models look like, and what do they have to look like, and how do I create this? And what's my first step? What's my second step? What do I do? The models are in there.
Actually, they're in the little tabs, conveniently enough. Yeah, as well as something else that Steve is going to talk about, which is in the back, highlighted is Christina Martinez, who actually only had a sphere of 100 people. And she's in this book because she did 240 transactions and 136 million in volume. So she actually did more business with less clients, which is kind of a revolutionary idea right now, because all of us as top producers are running around, trying to do more and more clients and more houses and all of that. So that's why I thought it was really topical that Steve share his story with us.
So, quick story about that. They put together the book and all that kind of stuff, and one of the models that's in there, it says, how big does your database need to be? Anybody know what the average size of a database is for those MREA agents?
2,000.
It's almost 2,000, 1,940, okay? So what's the model? It's like, okay, with an average of 1,940 people in your net database. Okay. That's how they created that. Well, as they were looking at it, now Dave Jenks is one of the authors on there. You'll see him, Dave Jenks and I are sitting at a Arizona Diamondbacks game. We're talking about real estate, and I said, my model is about specialization and people specializing and doing the one thing they do well. Because if you think about a baseball team, we're watching this game out there, and I said, nobody's putting the pitcher in the outfield. Nobody's taking the shortstop and putting them over at first base, but in the real estate business, what they want to do is they want to pick one person to do all of those different things. That makes sense. Why don't you get the best person at those specific things? So one of the things he said to me was, he said, our intention after this was to write a book on how to buy your first home. But when they saw Christina Martinez in the back here, and she only had 100 people in her database, and yet she did, what was it, is it 4.3 million? Let's see.
That's the last tab.
Last tab there. What did she do in production?
1.36. 136 million.
136 million. What's her GCI?
4 million.
So with the smallest database, she made $4 million that year. So I said, we need to write a book and a system so that our agents inside of our company can help people build wealth and do what Christina Martinez did. Because if she's at the top of the industry, then we need to do something in order to help all of our agents do that. And that's why this book is written.